Yo, check this out. This is Wayne Wonder, representing for Warieka LTV. You see the vision, don't it? See the vision. Warieka LTV. Keep it locked.
No, I'm gonna tell you. We, us as bloggers, these are the issues that we need to address. You understand what I said? You see? Set the path for the youth. Share, like, and subscribe and stay tuned to the channel. I don't know all this shit. Yes, I. Greetings once again in the mighty name of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I first, and all things that's good. And I give thanks. See? So, and I get this as a gift. I'm gonna make sure they clear it, See? So I wanna, you don't know, people love the initiative and see? I never want to talk the title, because I notice when I run, go get on the own a copy quickly and read it off for myself. I'm not interested now, am I reading again? Tanya Lawrence, are you me a talk? You don't know. Bless up. See, mama, don't know, big up. You don't know, be positive. See, now we give thanks and we love it. See, we love the energy. See, so when we bust the first chapter and then the whole of the car run, go on and tomorrow we say, oh no, man, John, I have up sometime, but sure. I'm mad love, see me, family love. See, I'm not going to read the acknowledgement because I'm excited too. You see, I read the prelude though, the prelude hot. See? Bob Marley was seething with rage, his eyes simmering like a wild mountain cat's. Never before had I ever seen him in such a fury. Slowly he cocked the trigger of the huge black automatic 9mm pistol and leveled the muzzle inches from my right eye. Behind him, armed with an identical gun, loomed his road manager. I think him there was a royal friend because really and truly a royal brother. That skill code is to Bob. So if Bob did have a cannon, skill code would have a cannon too. What you expect? Yeah, probably even me when I so close to Bob would have a cannon to hit me the dead and Baba say, right. I saw the thing say Rasta. Anyway, we could continue. Seen 9mm behind him. Skill call a militant general enough, I'm going to observe and respect. Yeah. Pistol and leveled the muzzle inches from my right eye. Behind him, armed with an identical gun, loomed this road manager, Alan Cole. Now, if you understand, so in our imagination, I just have visualized Alan Cole, the meaner, and how Alan Cole, the minister, based on the person who I know, and I know that guy, now go talk, say, him shit up the whole of that chair there. You see, but me could continue. Sign the paper, Dan Taylor. Alright, I'm going to blow you away, Bob whispered. Just do it, man. Dan the man they don't have to convince you. You lie that one day. Right there, so you lie. No, we need so much effort to convince you because you know them man are dog. Worse, them come themselves with something where you know them not half you do. No, sorry people. But yeah, alright, we're going to continue here, Saka. Alright. Just do it, man. I read the document he waved in my face. It dissolved every verbal and written agreement made between the two of us over the years. I had dedicated years of my life to Bob's career, helping him in a small way to grow from a ghetto tough gang to a poised, respected, multimillionaire global superstar. Now he was trying to undo everything between us, everything I had worked for, in an act of betrayal. The afternoon had started routinely enough with that now with some people. That's now where more stuck and listen. By this time, Dan Taylor would have been some serious money, would have made some serious money off of Bob himself as well too, So And I like him, I do what him I do without getting paid. Him obviously I get paid. Seeing so, you could have used if a man decides to well, I'll cut and go. Yeah, because you know, see, you go on, Bob create you as much as you would have created Bob. No, I'm not defend nobody, I just observe and I explain human nature from my perspective point of view. You know, see, yeah. See, but again, as some more money this the book here is see, and you don't know. You know, see, yeah. So calling it an act of betrayal is like, cheap, yes, a business. The afternoon had started routinely enough with a call. The afternoon had started routinely enough with a call from Bob, who was staying at his mother's mansion in Miami between concert tours of Europe and the Far East. He had asked me to come over to chat about something that was worrying him. We began our talk by his huge, shimmering swimming pool. As the conversation grew more and more heated, he commanded Alan and me to move to his room. Within minutes, the three of us were scuffling, and Alan had drawn two evil-looking pistols out of a wooden bedroom wardrobe. Even with the guns pointed at me, I tried to stay cool. Not that I wasn't frightened. It occurred to me that Bob just might shoot, but I also understood the old Jamaican technique of intimidation. That I don't. I intimidate them gunshot that way getting a Bob house a couple years ago. I was intimidation them that too. Like Bob, I'd grown up battering about on the streets of Jamaica and understood how Jamaicans use intimidation to get their way. I also knew that the bluster and threat rarely led to bloodshed. But Bob continued screaming and waving the gun at me. You are going to sign. What you trying to do to me? I met his threatening stare defiantly and told him I am not going to sign. There's gonna be a whole heap of contradiction to that whole prelude here in another book here later on. I can promise you that. Cause you see this posturing where you say I go on here so regarding signing Dan Taylor, not that I'm saying he signed or had to sign at this time, but him saying he wasn't gonna or not or whatever because he know him now got dead or because he know no blood now got shed. It's just a lie where you can do one side, like some guy on one side with them keyboard and then just type where they want to type because they know anybody. That's exactly what happened here. So that's the reverse of that, except this is the devolved version of such a process. You see, because we know that now. Maybe you have more serious meat of the matter further on down there, so we are going to establish his knowledge and what would have perceived to be more of a concern in this situation, given earlier experiences with the same people. And so, see, if you understand what I say, I hope so. See. All right. Bob continues screaming, what you are trying to do to me? I met his threatening stare defiantly and told him I am not going to sign. At that moment, one of the small children, I think it was Ziggy, appeared in the doorway. Dad, Don and Daddy fighting, he shouted to his grandmother, but suddenly calmed down. Bob suddenly calmed down. He respected his mother and would do nothing to upset her. When I finally parted with Bob on that decisive day, I noticed that his mood seemed to be growing more and more unpredictable. I also left knowing that my relationship with him was over. We had both ascended so far from our humble beginnings that for either of us there was simply no going back. He had risen from the slums of Trenchtown in Jamaica to become a worldwide superstar, a global icon of liberation movements. I too had undertaken my own odyssey that began with my 13-year-old mother going into labor in Jamaica's Victoria Jubilee Hospital. Okay, I mean, read that to make sure. So her mother was a 13-year-old. Okay. Alright, chapter 1, growing up in Jamaica. I was born in Jamaica on a typical cloudless, sunlit day on February the 10th, 1943, arriving at just about the time the island's most influential newspaper, The Gleaner, was being tossed on the manicured lawns of the uptown houses. I am told that it was a bright, yeah, bicycle man used to go around and throw Gleaner upon people posh. And it gonna still happen to this day as well. You know, see it in a places, parts of Jamaica. You know, certain people not go out to buy the newspaper. It's delivered to this day, today. Manicure lawns. I'm told that it was bright, sparkling day, fit for a tourist brochure. The kind that Bob Marley would sing about. Sun is shining, weather is sweet. Sun is shining. My mother, Cynthia Llewellyn, 13 years old and a black maid, had given birth to me at the Victoria Jubilee Hospital, one of the 20 newborn in the hospital that Wednesday in 1943. Kingston, the capital of Jamaica and my birthplace, had seen many changes since its founding in 1692, when the island's former capital, Port Royal, was destroyed in an earthquake. At the time of my birth, as now, the city retained its original 17th century grid-looking physical layout, bounded on three sides by north, east, and west streets, and on the south by the Kingston Harbour. In true colonial style, the main arteries of the cities were named King, Queen, Dukes, and Hanover Street. Franklin Town, where I lived and was raised in the eastern end of the city, was a grid of dimly lit, narrow, crisscrossing street. Its spacious Victorian houses were occupied by renters. The well-off owners have fled the city for the foothills of St. Andrew to escape the flood of poor Jamaicans pouring in from the countryside. Here I spent the first 10 years of my life as a Donald kid. My mother, whom I never really knew either then or in later years, was living in my birth with a black gardener named Taylor. Even so, she had a brief affair with Vernal Kidd, a white British soldier stationed at the Up Park Camp Barracks, which was then an English barracks, but is now the home of the Jamaica Defence Force. As the story goes, after my birth, Mr. Taylor becomes suspicious and questioned my mother sharply about my fair complexion, but somehow she always managed to convince him that, given time, I would properly darken. 9 months later, with Mr. Taylor asking troublesome questions about my complexion again, my mother abruptly took me to Up Park Camp and deposited me on the desk of my biological father, Mr. Vernal Kidd. My newly found father was Scottish and in charge of the motor pool of his regiment. We never became close, and after the first 10 years, I didn't see him again until 1969. Mr. Kidd, or Kidd, as everyone in Franklin Town knew him, promptly began looking for someone with whom he could leave me. It was a search that was to continue throughout the first 10 years of my life. One day, he took me to the home of Mistress Minnie Mallory, who apparently had no children. I vividly remember how Mistress Mallory led me by the hand to the back veranda, a common feature of the house at the time, making it clear that as a bastard with black mother who was a maid, I was not good enough for the front of her house. His attempt to pawn me off on Mrs. Mallory having failed, Mr. Kidd eventually succeeded with Aunt Daisy Belazario, who resided at Cambridge Street. Aunt Daisy was one of those rare brown Jamaican ladies of English descent and good breeding who who had fallen on hard times. Although only a petite 4 feet 11 inches tall, she always carried herself with dignity and pride. Kind, soft-spoken and gentle, she was not much given to histrionics because Aunt Daisy also looked the prejudice in vice as a way. Name vice, but we may try explain the belief, the actual, the effect where the science of them imply upon we have so because the lady was fair and thing like that, she was well kept. You know, who was raised at chemistry, and Daisy was one of those rare brown Jamaican ladies of English descent and good breeding. You understand? Because of the English descent, she's of good breeding, and you know, and them little way they we let down myself. And that may I try. I'm glad we get for points out there. So even if somebody was saying I write a book, somebody was affected by them things. See, although only a patent 4 feet 11 inches tall, she always carried herself with dignity and pride. Kind, soft-spoken and gentle, she was not much given to histrionics. Because Aunt Daisy also looked after 4 other children born under similar circumstances, her day-to-day living was built on the theme of God will provide. And she was right too. God did provide where my Mr. Kid didn't. Many were the desperate days Aunt Daisy would scribble a note. Many were the desperate days Aunt Daisy would scribble a note, stick it in my hand, and send me off to an importer who ran a business on Orange Street in downtown Kingston. I returned with an envelope of money. The note to the importer never failed, although to this day I didn't know why. By the time I was 11, however, Aunt Daisy had just about given up on me. She could not keep me in school, no matter how hard she tried, for I had been spending all my days on the waterfront. The Kingston waterfront was then a hive of exciting activity. Not a week passed when there was not a US or British naval vessel in port. Cruise ship made scheduled stops. The United Fruit Company banana boats called to unload cargo for Kingston merchants and traders before sailing to Port Antonio, Warieka, and Montego Bay to pick up the bananas for the markets of Britain and the USA. It was quite a sight for me, a boy of 11, to see all these ships sailing in and out of one of the world's finest natural harbors, the port of Kingston, whose backdrop was framed by the majestic Blue Mountain Range, its reef green peak towering over 8,000 feet. Located along this Kingston waterfront strip was Jamaica's first major hotel, the Myrtle Bank, a palatial edifice that had been built by the United Fruit Company. I would pass this magnificent colonial-style structure almost daily. Its elaborate iron fence protecting the expanse of green manicured lawns from native feet. Its lawns overlooking the driveway lined by towering, swaying royal palms. To all but rich brown Jamaicans and white tourists, the Myrtle Bank was then forbidden territory. A few years later, the late Evan Blake, black author and journalist, would dive headfirst into its swimming pool, cause consternation and newspaper headlines, and shatter this exclusivity. Many were the days when, having escorted decent ship passengers to the grounds of the Myrtle Banks, I would watch them stroll casually inside the portal of this fabulous palace, leaving me on the street gawking with envy and longing. Hotels such as the Myrtle Bank Hotel in Kingston, the Titchfield Hotel and the Ethelhart in Port Antonio, and the Casablanca in Montego Bay were then at the core of a budding tourist trade and important to the United Fruit Company, whose ships, in addition to transporting bananas to England, also brought visitors to Jamaica. Eventually, in a move Significant for Jamaican's future, the hotel was bought by Arab Jamaican Abe Issa, the godfather of the tourist industry. This acquisition led to a fantastically successful career in tourism. Issa moved on to buy Tower Isle, now couples in St. Mary, and finally some 5 more hotels worldwide, leaving behind a legacy and an industry that is today Jamaica's largest foreign exchange earner. During these apprenticeship days, my life centered around the streets of downtown Kingston that ran parallel and perpendicular to the waterfront. They formed the throbbing pulse of the city. Here lay the premier commercial shopping areas of Harbour Street and King Street, then the home of the leading Arab and Jewish merchant whose shops were bursting with imported goods. So, see, even in when the Arab and Jews find common ground in our community because the marketing, see, the profit where them can make from it. So now why not go on there so you don't have no difference because everybody make money off of we and we not see it. So them put all the war for them war, religious war and thing with them have, aside when them in our community and make money. While we continue war against all one another, disagree with one another, disrespect one another, discredit one another, and them thing that them a make money. And all I help with do it in a lot of cases too. I help with discredit and disrespect one another in a lot of cases too. You see it? I will buy into them thing they run with it and continue daily with them stupidity there. You see it? So yeah. Living good together. Here the businesses of the Issas, the Morins, the Duries and the Hannahs, the fabulous stores such as Nathan's, Morins, Time Stores and EA Issa and Brothers competed cheek by jowl with Indian merchants, the Dandlanis and Chantanis, with their exquisite jewelry and silk. Here were the street vendors lowly hawking their camphor balls, hair curlers, clothespin and sweets on the sidewalks. Some 2 blocks away, spreading a path parallel to King Street from north to south, ran Duke Street, home of the island's major legal firm, with their hushed, wainscoted offices. But these were only places I had seen in passing or know about through rumor. My own life was somewhere on other streets and began in earnest only after the thick tropical darkness blanketed the island and the Kingston was blazing in its nighttime glitter. Then you would find me in the bars and clubs scattered among the dimly lit streets of downtown Kingston. From east to west and north to south, West Street housed the renowned Fatswaller All-American Bar, which had recently relocated from Hanover Street to become the first bar homesick sailors stumbling ashore would encounter. Hanover Street boasted a glittering stir of bars and clubs. Here was Machong's Captain Corner and Sailor's Rest. All these clubs were much the same inside and out. They all had a wooden bar with stools of varying heights, sizes and styles. They all had jukeboxes with the latest overseas hits and outside wall festooned with gaudy designs and advertisements painted by untrained local artists. Inside, the walls were decorated with photographs cut from the pages of US magazines or nude calendars. Scribbled above the bar would be the prevailing business ethics. Cash is alive, credit is dead. Back room was fitted out with the basic essential necessary for short-term personal gratification. The stock in trade of the bar was Jamaican white rum of the highest proof that could scorch the most experienced alcoholic's throat. Red rum branded such as Black Seal, Cold Seal, and Appleton were sold along with the inevitable Jamaican red stripe beer, as well as foreign beers brands such as Pabst Blue, Ribbon, Budweiser, and Heineken. The bars all but exclusively catered to the ordinary sailors, soldiers, and lower class Jamaican, although occasionally upper class Jamaicans would stop by on their way home from their offices or on their way to expensive brothels and warehouses located in many of these areas of Kingston. Big up yourself, Jaboni. Yeah, memories as vivid as yesterday. You know what I say? Kingston at this time, cause it's like I can relate to the whole thing, the scenario. I can imagine and envision the thing based on the memory away. Some conversation where I and Jaboni have on them way there. So I say, yeah. Big up yourself, man. Kingston at this time boasted such exclusive brothels as Scully's, Jude's, Paradise Club, and Maidman's Bamboo Bar, a bar which was run by an Englishman who was always referred to as Mr. Many of today's businessmen, politicians, and columnists were frequent visitors to these brothels, and one or two of the live-in girls have gone on to fame and fortune. There was the usual distinction between the street whores and living ladies because they offered very few economic benefits for me. I very rarely visited any of these upper-class clubs and warehouses. The bars, on the other hand, did not share the rigid rules of the brothels, and since they were open to the public, it was quite in order for uptowners to visit and partake of the late-night action. Kingston had not yet become segregated by wealth and class as it is today, and in the 50s, all of its citizens moved freely without fear for their safety. The city, however, was already showing signs of decay, leading the more affluent residents to move into the hills of St. Andrew, abandoning Jonestown, Denhamtown, and Trenchtown to the newly arrived downtrodden and oppressed from the countryside, about whom Bob Marley sang in his Trenchtown Rock. But it was on the waterfront of Kingston where, say I lie that Kingston get up people there everywhere from a long time. Kingston wasn't exclusively rich. Yes, certain community would have been, but you did have a whole heap of community that was ghetto where people build up their own little thing and work and make money and save and start buy resident as all over. As soon as they move into the community, them start moving. And I like so when people move from country commerce. You see, a lot of that happen. We don't take that from say a whole heap of country people move from a town. Still. Seen, but that's not entirely the case. Like Kingston was exclusively rich and poor people they don't live in the rurals and things like that. The cities, however, was already showing signs of decay, leading to the affluent arrival. But it was on the waterfront of Kingston where my exposure to life began and where I flourished. One of the first things you learn in this environment was to be sharp, quick, smart, and ready for any break. To be ready for any break usually meant watching for the chance to escape the island, which meant always keeping a valid passport handy just in case the opportunity to migrate to the big outside world ever arose. It was this ambition to leave that led me to seek out my birth certificate and to discover that my mother had registered me Donald Delroy Taylor after her living gardener. I had his name, but not his color. By the time I turned 13 in 1956, I was 4 feet tall and confident enough to face life with a smile. Given the rules of the game, I was learning fast. I hustled day and night among the ranks of the waterfront slickest hustlers, such as Benji Howard, the top waterfront pimp, noted by his peers for his mode of dress, always in the latest American style and fashion. we all had what I would call a foreign mind. Maybe because of our mind was always on the next US buck, and our heart was always yearning for the exciting worlds of New York and London. Many of the hustlers even spoke with a phony American accent, which I myself never adopted. So when I be a youth, them still do to today. I can still visualize such professionals as Dutch and the pier foreman, Mr. Curlew. Dutch always dressed like a naval officer, clean, fresh, and upright. He would step aboard a recently berthed ship, salute the captain with military precision, and launch into his well-planned marketing spear that never failed to work. It was characters such as Dutch and Benji who fine-tuned my antenna, preparing me to face the world with confidence and very few hang-ups. There was never a dull moment for me on the waterfront, for as the sailors and the cruise passengers disembarked, I became tourist guide, pimp, or hustler, depending on their needs and desire. I would, for a fee and a reward, guide them to whatever they wanted. I would take some cruise passenger to the Myrtle Bank Hotel or hustle them into a taxi to ride uptown to the Hope Zoo and Gardens, or further on to Caston Garden, some 20 miles into the hills. I preferred, however, to persuade them to follow me to my favorite bars, where I had my private financial deals with the bartenders and the girls. By 16, I had come up with a lot of ideas that set me apart from the average hustler. I struck many and varied deals with club owners and waitresses. One such deal was that any beer I ordered would be sold to me for 2 shillings, and I in turn would sell it for 3 or 4 shillings to the unsuspected sailor. By prearrangement, the waiters would refuse to take the sailors' orders except through me. In true hustler style, I got the bar people to realize that they had to cater to me in order to keep the businesses. On the day that the ships did not come in, I scrounged for others' ways and means to earn a living. Sometimes I would wash the cars of leading businessmen. I remember washing cars in the park at Duke Street for such businessmen as Danny Williams, then working for a North American life insurance company, Roy Morin, owner of the Bestman's department stores on King Street, Vivian Blake, leading lawyer and politician who would later challenge Michael Manley to leadership of the People's National Party after the retirement of Michael's father, Norman Manley. By being street smart and by knowing how to hustle, I was able to survive. I spent most of my nights in the clubs. I knew all the barmaids, waitresses, bartenders, pimps, prostitutes, and gamblers. Looking back today, I still regard these days as among the most enjoyable in my life. The waterfront had become my home, its people replacing the mother and father I had never had. And always lurking in the background was faithful, dependable Aunt Daisy, providing a place of refuge when I needed one. Another of my main means of income was to hustle Lucky Strike and Camel cigarettes from the US sailors and sell them at a good profit to the Chinese, Indian, and Syrian merchants and the bars. To buy the cartons, I would offer dive for the money thrown overboard by the cruise ship visitors, a favorite pastime for us waterfront boys. I used to frequent Mr. Hill's kerosene shop on Hanover Street, between Laws and Barry Street, where at times his son Mickey Hill and I would exchange youthful thoughts. Uptown kids was always curious to know how we, the street people, lived. I remember vividly my only brush with the law when my friend, if I could call him that, Chinaman, got me into a tricky situation. Over time, I had developed a connection at Ray and Nephew that allowed me to buy rum at a bargain price. On this occasion, Chinaman ran away with the money. an American lady had given us to buy her some white rum. She reported the theft to Gupta, an Indian policeman who was openly feared by the waterfront hustlers because he made no bones about sending thieves and pimps to jail. He chased me and held me that Friday and locked me up over the weekend. Sorry about that. And locked me up over the weekend. See, at the Central Police Station, I escaped prison only because of a young lawyer, Noel Silvera, who used to play cricket at Kensington Cricket Club, where I hung out in my younger days. He saw me in the Sutton Street court, knew that I was not totally bad, and had agreed to personally pay back the money. The case was dismissed, leaving me eternally in his debt. My first taste of show business and its personnel came through the Ward Theatre, a few blocks from the waterfront and immediately overlooking Queen Victoria Park. Ward Theatre was and still is Jamaica's premier theatre. This impressive concert hall was a gift to the people of Jamaica from Colonel Ward. One day I was on the waterfront close to the Queen Victoria Pier with very little to do, as it was not a cruise or warship day. I was looking for action, and as fate would have it, I met Lloyd Price, the American singer. Lloyd had already struck gold with his massive hit Personality, which had brought him to Jamaica. Because of the transistor radio, which had become a status symbol on the waterfront, I knew all about him and his music. Lloyd Price and I got talking and quickly became friends. When he invited me to visit him at his uptown hotel, the Flamingo Hotel in Crossroads, I immediately said yes, eager to learn more about the fascinating world of entertainment. It was during this encounter that I first heard the name Stephen Hill, who had brought Lloyd Price to Jamaica. During the late 50s, Stephen Hill, a medium height, sharp features, brown Jamaican like myself, had the reputation of being Jamaica's leading impresario. With his wife, Dorothy Hill had been the Jamaican pioneer of show promotions. He had brought to the island artists ranging from the classical pianist Arthur Rubinstein and opera singer Marian Anderson to popular performers such as Nat King Cole, Billy Eckstine, and Cab Calloway, a truly remarkable achievement. After my encounter with Lloyd Price, I began hanging out at some of the Kingston theatres. On many occasions, I would be chased away by Stephen Hill himself when I admired from a distance and secretly tried to emulate. Whom I admired from a distance and secretly tried to emulate. But he would always shoo me away, calling me a dirty little hanger-on. My waterfront hustling skills, however, soon came in handy. One day, while hanging around the Wild and other show spots such as the Carib Theatre and the Regal and Tropical Cinema in Crossroads, I began to hear complaints from managers that they could not get their performers' stage clothes properly clean. Sensing an opportunity, I immediately began checking out the cleaning scene. After spending one whole week visiting the dry cleaners in Kingston, I decided to offer a professional valet service for artists visiting Jamaica. Yes, sorry, chapter long, I get on to. I began keeping track of the comings and goings of all visiting artists, deciding that I would directly hustle arriving managers for their valet business. Doing so would enable me to cut out the middlemen and would specifically bypass Mr. Hill, who I was sure would try to block me. In no time I had built my valet service into a kind of full-scale personal service for the artists. In addition to the valet service, I began to run errands and to pick up any incidentals the artists needed. I saw to it that the performers appeared on stage on time in their professional, cleaned performing clothes. Soon my services also include protecting the valuables of visiting performers from thieves. I did this business despite the objections and much to the continued annoyance of Stephen Hill. Even in those early days, I earned the respect of the people I dealt with, whether it was the businessman whose car I washed, the sailor I showed around Kingston, the lawyer, the trickster, the whore, or the street person. Respect given, respect returned became the hallmark of my associations. My valet and personal service thrives overnight. I boasted such illustrious clients as Fats Domino, Benny King, Chuck Jackson, whom I would later manage, and Little Anthony and the Imperials. With time, my prestigious list grew to include Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells and Jerry Butler. All these artists have expressed their appreciation to me for my professionalism, whether I acted as their Jamaican valet or, in some instances later on, as their manager. It was also through my valet service that in 1959 I got my first chance to travel. During my valeting for Little Anthony and the Imperial, I struck up a relationship with a friend of theirs, Philip Bow, who had come over from Nassau and who offered basically the same service in the Bahamas as I did in Jamaica. It was not surprising then that after the visit of the Imperials ended, Philip invited me to visit the Bahamas. Arriving in Nassau, 16 years old, and with some $10 in my pocket, I began to hang out at such clubs as Jankunu and Blackbeard's Tavern, which I felt were logical places to practice my valet service to the stars. I was also hoping to find some talent to manage, which was now my ambition. I began to make friends with most of the entertainers, including such persons as Richie Delmore and the Kemp brothers, Jonathan and David. It was David Kemp who put me up in a wooden house he owned on Taylor Street, which he used intermittently as a meeting spot for his girlfriends. He also got me a job as a busboy at the Dolphin Hotel, enabling me to survive. My life in Nassau was a stark contrast to my life in Jamaica and prepared me for my US days. Nassau was then blatantly racist, which most of, not all of the black Bahamian confined to over the hill. All the pastors on Bay Street were owned by white Bahamians, a scenario that eventually led to black consciousness and a long reign of Sir Lyndell Pendling and the PLP. To black Bahamians, only menial or service jobs were available. Even if you were a born Bahamian, as a black, you were still required to identify yourself to security if you were found on the Cable Beach or the tourist side of the island after dark. Odd as it may seem, because of the nature of the music business, the transition from valet to manager was only one short step. People like me, by the very nature of our exposure to established stars, attracted the interest of newer talent seeking to break into the business. Soon, and with great success, I was able to take on the management of the Bahamian calypso singer Tony Seymour and Rusty. Still, I felt increasingly uncomfortable in Nassau. I was becoming aware that if ever I was to obtain a Bahamian work permit, I had to play my cards continuously. In the breeze was the ever-present fear Bahamas had of being overrun by the increasing flow of Jamaicans. I found myself always looking over my shoulder and watching my back, even though I was also growing quickly in experience in the entertainment business and adding confidence to my management style. 4 to 5 months after I first arrived in Nassau, I got wind that the Bahamian immigration was looking for me. I needed no other excuse. I immediately packed what little I had and headed back to Jamaica. But I returned with my eyes freshly open and with the resolve to make entertainment management my career. As it turned out, Bahamian immigration had done me a favor because I returned to Jamaica just as Jackie Wilson was visiting. I immediately approached him to become his valet and provide him with such excellent service that he offered to buy me a ticket to the USA, Miami to be exact. After that, things moved very quickly. Jackie gave me $60 for my air ticket and asked me to join him in the USA. But no, I needed a visa. It was then that I remembered this military attaché from my hustling days who worked at the US Embassy located on Duke Street and who often would visit the downtown bars after hours. I recall that he had promised me that if I ever got a ticket, he would grant me a visa. I immediately went to Mr. Chantani, who owned a shop located on Arbor Street, known as the East Indian Bazaar, for a letter of recommendation. In the old days, I used to bring sellers to his shop in exchange for a commission. Without any hesitation, he gave me the recommendation letter, which I hurriedly took to the attaché along with my airplane ticket. That very same day, the entry visa was stamped in my passport. Bursting with glee and excitement, I headed straight for 10 Kensington Road, a well-known whorehouse and club owned and run by a friend, Billy Furnham, where I had hung out ever since my return from Nassau. Billy was a slick, slim, sharp, tall, brown Jamaican. His club, the high hat, and his racehorse, Sir Alec, gave him an aura of flair and style. He would cruise around Kingston in his white Cadillac, visiting such friends as Freddie Chin, who owned the Club Havana, where Carlos Malcolm and his Afro-Caribbean music, forerunner of the ska music of the 60s, held sway. I blurted out to Billy that I was leaving that day with Jackie, and as if by magic, the word spread through the house and indeed through the neighborhood. Dante was on his way to the USA and leaving with Jackie Wilson, no less. Dumping my limited position into one small bag and with a very certain sense of importance amid cheers and best wishes, I jumped into Billy's car and waved goodbye to my friends and neighbors. It was 1960. I was 17 years old and excited by the prospect of a new life. My dreams of reaching the USA was only a few hours away. For the time being, I was washing my hands of Jamaica. I was ready to plunge into a brand new decade, the 60s. End of chapter 1. Seeing, as you all observe, this is the writings of Dan Taylor, Bob Marley's former manager. Seeing? So we're going to stop it there, so we're going to leave it there. So share, like, and subscribe. Seeing? Blessed love, Rastafari. I give thanks.